Sunday. It is November 7th. It is Sunday, 12:21 p.m. in the afternoon. And, well, I'm just having a busy day today. For those of you who have watched or listened to my most recent experience, you know that it happened sometime in the middle of the night or the early morning, however you'd like to see it. And I posted that experience earlier. And now I am doing my regular Sunday episode. Before I start, I wanted to very quickly mention, and I talked about this on one of my other Sunday episodes, that my podcast will be, at that point I think I said within the next few weeks, and I'm thinking within the next week or two, my podcast will be coming out on Apple, Spotify, all those places that podcasts come out to. And just to let you know, for those of you who may not have heard the last Sunday video where I talked a little bit about this podcast, I want to make sure that everyone knows, and I want to continue to remind them that this podcast will not be astral projection. This is a fictional podcast that I created, and it's called Naui of the Lightning Tribe. And so I will talk more about it once it is released and out there. But of course, I also want to mention the fact that it will be 100% completely free to listen to. And hey, if you want to take a moment to listen, that would be wonderful. That would be great. Anyway, let me get to the episode today, Sunday's episode, the do's and don'ts of contacting loved ones on the astral plane or the other side. This is a subject that I like to touch on from time to time because I know there is so much interest in it. So many of us have loved ones and wish to contact them to perhaps say a last goodbye. I've even read about some on the internet that say they are in regular contact with their loved ones. This all usually happens through astral projection. Of course, there are those of you, I'm sure, out there that have other abilities, more in the sense of psychic abilities, that ability to communicate with those that have passed on. But this episode, of course, will focus on astral projection. And before I forget, I want to make sure that I give a quick tip on those that are attempting to astral project for the first time. And something that I talked about again last week, that I would, with every episode, regardless of what I talked about, try to give at least one tip for you out there that are maybe struggling or might just need some extra support. So let's talk about reaching the vibrational stage, or what I like to refer to as the sweet spot, or the place between being asleep and awake. I've read about so many folks out there being able to get to that point and not being able to separate. But in my opinion, once you've arrived in that space, the rest should be effortless. The example I like to give or to use is my first projection when I was 9 years old. I felt a tingling sensation throughout my entire body. It felt like static electricity, but much more powerful. At one point, it felt as if I became lighter than air and began to rise. If you feel yourself struggling with this stage, the vibrational stage, the sweet spot, whatever you'd like to call it, continue to relax and let go until you feel the transfer of movement from the physical to your spirit being. It should be effortless. So that's my tip on astral projection. Let's get into the do's and don'ts of contacting loved ones on the other side. First, keep an open mind, especially about the form your loved one might take. The example I like to use is my grandmother. She would literally appeared to be 10 or 11 years old when I saw her with her hair drawn back into a ponytail. She was adorable, by the way. She looked nothing like I remembered, but when I saw her, I knew it was her. How? Instinct is the key, and this is something that I talk about so much, to rely on your instincts. It is something that I rely on heavily when I'm on the astral plane, and it has never led me down the wrong path. The other thing about my instincts out there is that they are about 1,000,000 billion times more powerful than they are here in the 3D world. It's powerful enough to have a conversation with a being without using words. I can feel their words and they can feel mine. Okay, so another do. Use the love you have for that loved one to guide you. Again, I'll use the contact I had with my grandmother as an example. When I first emerged from my body that night that I connected with her, I thought about how much I loved and missed her. The feeling literally drew me through the air to her like a magnet. Love is such a powerful force, the most powerful in the universe. Another do. Understand that this interaction may not be what you imagine it to be. I'll again use the meeting that I had with my grandmother as an example. First, we didn't use words. We communicated through feelings. I could feel that she missed me, and I could also feel that her job in the spirit realm was to help souls to cross over to the other side. And of course, if you knew my grandmother in life, you would know that this is the perfect job for her. I felt her ask me if I was coming with her, and I told her without using words that I was still living on earth, but that someday I would see her again. A couple of things surprised me about this. The first being that I thought that when you were seen out in the astral plane, that people would know you were still connected to a body. But of course, with the meeting with my grandmother, I realized she didn't realize that I was still connected to a body. And so that's more than likely why she asked me if I was coming with her as well. The other thing was there was no sadness with this when she said it. You know, so many of us on this planet, when we lose people, you know, we do the funeral and there's sadness, and out there, it seems to me, the feeling that I got was that this is simply a transition. There was also this feeling like this was my grandmother, but so much more than my grandmother at the same time. To some, this might make them a bit sadder because their loved one might not look or feel the exact same way that they remembered. But keep in mind that once a being doesn't have a body, I believe they have access to understand their entire self. That means experiencing themselves as an infinite being. I believe that this gives them an entirely different perspective than we have. And that may feel like a certain amount of distance, perhaps, that's between you and that loved one. Again, who knows? When you contact your loved one out there, they may be exactly how you remember them. But if that doesn't happen, I want you to keep these words that I've spoken in mind. So I want to quickly talk about the things I feel are the don'ts. I want to emphasize these are things that are suggestions, of course, and are based solely on my experience. Ultimately, you'll make up your own mind and follow your own guidance. When a loved one passes, I would advise not to make an attempt to connect with them early on. I believe there is a process of adjustment to their new normal, and that might take some time. In fact, I now have a rule that I don't actually reach out to them, but I do let them and my guides know through my thoughts that I'm here and ready to connect when they're ready. This worked quite well with a good friend that I made a brief video about that passed away recently. When I finally did see him and, he was ready, he looked so young and happy. I believe he is in a good place. And by the way, I'm not saying it would be easy to do this, but I believe it's the right thing to do for them and for yourself. The other thing, don't. Do your best not to hold on. Now, I know this is a tough one, but something that has to be addressed. I believe that letting go of a loved one, especially ones that you were extremely close to, is the furthest thing from one's mind right after they've passed. What consumes most of our minds at that moment is how much we miss that loved one. Regrets that we may have in regards to them, like not having been able to express how much we loved them when they were on the planet, and wanting, of course, to reconnect with them. I believe that desperately holding on to someone you love keeps them here. They love you and they don't want to leave you while you're in pain. This keeps them from moving on, which I believe is the most natural and beneficial thing for them to do. But again, this is a tough one. That's why I say, do your best. If you're going to astral projection, by the way, this is the last don't. I wouldn't advise you to learn solely to visit a loved one. Astral projection is a powerful tool to learn about our true selves and the purpose for our existence in this 3D world. There would be so much you'd be missing out on if you used it for only one thing. Anyway, those are the do's and don'ts. Thank you so much for coming on another journey with me. And until next time, take care.